Gardeners are constantly trying to find ways to gain additional space to grow more varieties of plants and bring home more of the fruits, vegetables, and herbs that they love. Oftentimes, gardeners are limited by the amount of soil area they have at their disposal, or do not have time to attend to a wide variety of plants with today's busy schedules. Square foot gardening offers a solution. This method is known to produce higher yields, save soil and water, and requires a fraction of the time to maintain. In this video, I'll walk you through the components of square foot gardening, some of the pros and cons of the technique, and give you tips to be able to incorporate square foot gardening into your gardens this season. Mel Bartholomew invented the technique in the 1970s. He's an engineer who wanted to maximize garden efficiency, and he found this way to maximize harvest while minimizing the work and inputs involved. This system uses raised beds, typically 4 feet by 4 feet, that are filled with a soil mix of peat moss, vermiculite, and compost to ensure that the garden starts free from weeds and diseases. This also eliminates the labor-intensive process of preparing the native soil each year, and it provides excellent moisture retention. The garden is then organized into square foot sections using a grid built on top of the soil. The grid is most often built out of wood to hold up to multiple seasons. This makes it easy to plant seeds according to how much space they need and plan out companion plantings. The grid makes it easy to keep track of where everything was planted year after year in order to plan crop rotations. Having raised beds that are small enough to access every square foot section from the outside eliminates the need to step on the soil at any point, which could otherwise lead to compaction and possible trampling of plants. All thinning and weeding is done by cutting instead of pulling to prevent disrupting the soil and potentially harming roots of desirable plants in the square foot gardening system. Square foot gardening is said to use just a fraction of the water because of traditional gardening because moisture is stored so efficiently in the soil mix and is constantly available to the plants. Also, less water is evaporated from the soil because the tightly arranged plants provide shade. Because there are no paths or spaces between different types of plants, all of the soil area is being utilized. Mel Bartholomew claims that this method requires just 2% of the work of normal gardening because you don't need to water as often, there are fewer weeds because there's little bare soil, the raised beds require little to no maintenance once constructed, and the bare soil that does exist is shaded by the canopy of the crops, so weeds don't grow as well. Square foot gardening can also be very visually appealing because gardeners can create a mosaic or checkerboard of bright colors using the square foot sections. There are drawbacks to square foot gardening though, and it is up to every gardener to decide if the technique suits their plans. It is difficult to scale up and is mostly only practical for small gardens. The soil mix used in the raised beds can also be expensive and may not be the most sustainable practice if used in excess. Square foot gardens also cannot typically accommodate large plants such as zucchini because those plants typically occupy more than 1 square foot. Because the raised beds need to be accessible from all sides, it can also be difficult to fence them off in areas where deer or rabbits are an issue. To summarize, square foot gardening uses raised beds organized into a grid of square foot sections, a soil mix of peat, vermiculite, and compost, and all weeds are cut instead of pulled. It can increase harvest by maximizing space, reduces water needs, and requires less time to maintain. If you'd like to learn more about square foot gardening, you can check out Mel Bartholomew's book, or take a look at many online resources for this popular method for additional tips, example planting designs, and artistic additions. Thank you for listening, and happy gardening.